everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Ex Post Watcho, your favorite movie retrospective podcast. My name is Jason. I am your host, along with my friend and co-host, Ilana. How are you doing today, Ilana?
Doing great. How are you today, Jason?
I'm doing good. Are you in the right state of mind to go on a psychedelic journey?
Fucking ready, man.
Sunday. It's the headspace for that sort of thing before you got to go to work on Monday. We're going to watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The movie's about drugs. That's what that was about. This movie came out in 1998. It was directed by Terry Gilliam, who was famous from being part of the Monty Python crew. He made all those cartoons of the feet stepping on people, as well as made some other movies like Brazil. Have you ever seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
I did see it probably a handful of years after it initially came out. I saw it because a lot of people I was hanging out with at the time were big film nerds, and they were freaking out about this movie. And a lot of them were young men, like around my age. I was also a young woman. And they were freaking out also about Hunter S. Thompson in general. I think, you know, that sort of young discovery of who you are and what the world is, and all that jazz. I saw it and I thought, yeah, okay. I was a bit confused about the hype surrounding it and about, you know, how much my friends were really hyping this up. So it was it just kind of, I saw it and then it kind of fell completely off my radar and I didn't really think about it again. Obviously, I know this is a very sort of iconic film and story, and I know Hunter S. Thompson, although I haven't read the book. So I'm interested in watching it now as an adult versus when I was a teen. Not that much has changed for me. I'm still a pretty wholesome gal. I don't think that I can relate to a lot of the things happening in this story, but I'm interested in seeing it from more like slightly more experienced human being lens than when I initially watched it, and see if that influences my experience at all. I'm looking forward to it, but yeah, not that impressed from my first, not even not impressed. It's a fine movie, just didn't connect with it.
Yeah, this definitely comes from that era of late 90s, early 2000s, like weird movies that young guys really got into. Yeah. I saw trailers for this when it came out and was really like, what in the fuck is going on? Because there's just a lot of like weird effects and visuals and stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the movie for the first time, and I definitely liked a lot of it because it's a comedy. It's weird. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of funny lines and situations and stuff like that. But I definitely didn't get it. I was like, I don't know what that was all about. And I've seen it a couple times since and appreciated it more. I read the book maybe about 5 years ago. And yeah, Hunter S. Thompson, he's an interesting dude. He was a reporter, and he kind of pioneered maybe gonzo journalism, which is like he would just go and do stuff and write about it, but the storytelling style of journalism was his thing, I guess, as maybe making shit up. I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of like fantastical elements that find their way into the story that aren't necessarily true. I haven't fact checked any of this, but yeah. So, and the movie is kind of like, well, the book I think was, documenting some real life things he had taken part in, but he added a lot of this weird kind of like psychedelic flair to it. And it's written in 1971. And there's this theme of like the American dream and the changing of culture and society at that point, basically the transition from the 60s and hippies and free love into the 70s and maybe more the war on drugs, and, bad 70s economy. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing this. It should be fun. This episode is special because we're going to have a guest on for the first time. Our friend Matt, who is a listener who we've had conversations about some of the movies we've watched in the past, is going to come on and talk about this movie with us. So we're looking forward to that and seeing what he has to think. So with that said, let's go watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Drugs, drugs, drugs. Which are good, which are bad. Drugs, drugs, drugs. Ask your mom or ask your dad.
We're back from watching Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And as promised, we have a special guest, our friend, Matt Gunn. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, I'm doing really great. Ex post Watcho. I'm really happy to be here. And just excited to unpack everything that is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This movie for me, as a teenager watching it, I wasn't familiar with Hunter S. Thompson or his writing. I just knew that it was very cool. And me and my best friend, Ryan, watched this movie, and we were like into smoking weed, and we were like into wearing Acapulco shirts. We were into going on adventures, and sure, we were just like smoking a joint. It's not really like comparable to what these guys are doing in this movie, but we just kind of envisioned ourselves as like Raoul Duke and Dr. Gonzo, like rolling around in my mom's Ford Escort station wagon, listening to Limp Bizkit or whatever the fuck we were listening to at that age. So, I just was like, as far as the movie went when I was 17, I don't know if I really understood sort of what was happening in the late 1960s, what was happening with counterculture, what was happening, with the Vietnam War, and what was kind of the social significance of what Hunter S. Thompson was writing about or trying to make statements about. I didn't really get until maybe I was much older, and maybe still haven't absorbed all of them.
So you're saying that the movie inspired you to do drugs and commit crimes?
I think I was already smoking some marijuana and cracking a beer, if I was at a party or something. But no, I just thought the whole thing was super cool. And I was watching this movie the other day, and my girlfriend was in the room, and she was just like, "This is horrifying." And I was like, "This is horrifying. Why did I think it was so fucking cool?" But man, and even now there's just something undeniably really cool about this movie.
Yeah. When I watched it back in the day, I kind of didn't get it. I was around 18 or 19 or so when I saw it. And there was something to the sort of debauchery of it that was funny and entertaining. Everyone likes to say it's Bat Country and As Your Attorney and stuff like that. It's a very quotable, weird movie in that sense. But that was basically it to me. I completely didn't know it. I didn't even know Hunter S. Thompson. I didn't know it was based on a book for quite a long time. And then I heard about Hunter S. Thompson, and still I've read this book, but I haven't really read his other stuff. And it was a strange movie. Going back and watching it again, I think I like it a lot. It's entertaining, and I understand the broader context a bit more of the 60s. And it's basically he's lamenting the death of the 60s and the hippie movement and its failure. There's one little chunk of dialogue in the middle of the movie that kind of just explicitly states that. But it's very small. There's not a lot of it. And it's mostly just this weird, wacky adventure with these two characters. So I don't know. I like this movie. I feel like I get it. I feel like I understand it, but at the same time, a part of me doesn't quite get it. It doesn't hit the way I feel like it should, if that makes any sense. Ilana, what did you think?
So I don't know that I get it. I didn't when I was younger, and I thought I was just maybe hadn't lived enough life yet. And now watching it, I haven't lived, I mentioned this in our intro, I haven't lived a whole lot of life for a 36-year-old woman. However, I feel like this was really, okay, first of all, I watched it this afternoon and I had a headache. And now I have an even bigger headache. And I feel like...
Maybe you should take some drugs.
It's really long and it's really flashy, and there's no room to breathe except for that the wave speech whatever they call it, right? And at the very end, when he has his little moment, I was like, it took us 2 hours of complete madness to get to this. I was sort of like, most of my notes were like, what the fuck? What? Like, for why? But for what? To what end? Why? So I don't know. To me, this felt like a lot of movies that I really don't like, such as Whiplash, such as The Wolf of Wall Street, that just celebrate shitty behavior by shitty dudes. But this is more charming. Johnny Depp is very likable in this role. There are a lot of very funny moments. Like, I don't hate this movie, but I don't quite get it. And I'm not sure that I necessarily like it all that much. But I feel like I can be convinced otherwise, but also maybe not.
So you wrote in your notes that if you like this movie, you can't complain about Moulin Rouge or something along those lines.
Yeah. Everyone I know is like, Moulin Rouge is too crazy. It's just too much. And I was watching this and I was like, if you ever fucking sit through this movie even once, don't you dare. I will fully just slap you right across the mouth if you ever come at Moulin Rouge for being too much. Because that has a very clear story and purpose to it.
Moulin Rouge is, just today I was thinking there's really only two people, in my opinion, that could have directed this movie, Terry Gilliam, and Baz Luhrmann is the other one. So I totally understand the parallel between Moulin Rouge and Baz Luhrmann and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I think it's really, Baz Luhrmann is the only one that could have also have directed this movie. So
was he ever in contention for it?
Not from what I read. I read that there were others that were kind of trying to get it off the ground in the maybe the earlier 90s or late 80s. Bill Murray did a great job portraying Hunter S. Thompson in Where the Buffalo Roam. So yeah, I think they had been trying to get it off the ground previously.
Brando was supposed to be in this at one point, so I think it was pretty early. I can't remember who else was supposed to be in it. So this has been, I think, in the works had been in the works for a really long time before they finally got this made.
Yeah, there was a Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi combo that was considered at one point, which would have been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, as I was watching this the other night, I had the thought, this looks a lot like Moulin Rouge. Like, it literally reminded me of that movie. And both like the visual style, like the colors, the very, very 90s color palette, like the sort of bright red and orange and stuff like that. But also the unrelenting intensity. Like, this movie is kind of a grind. Like, you're just like, everything's at 11. It's so stressful. Like, people are pointing knives and guns at each other the whole time. It just goes from like one intense situation to another. Yeah.
When this first started, I skipped backwards to like rewatch scenes so many times because I could not keep up with what was going on. And also at the beginning, I could not understand shit that Johnny Depp was saying. I was like, am I just old? Do I need to put subtitles on just to get through this movie? I think maybe I'm just getting old, but I couldn't keep up at first. And then I kind of fell into it, but holy, it just kind of slaps you right across the face. Like, as soon as he's like, when the drugs began to take hold, and you're like, here we go.
Yeah. Johnny Depp as Hunter S. Thompson as Raoul Duke has a real cadence to the way that he speaks, so it can, sometimes it's a really fast, mumbling. That can be super difficult to understand, unless you've seen it, twice a year for the last 20 years. And you're like, it's backcountry,
Yeah, I think that is what works best about this movie is it's a kind of a mechanism for Hunter S. Thompson's writing to sort of just flow at you. And it's really poetic. Like, the man is a good writer, the way he sounds and all that. So I read the book years ago, and I was kind of like, as I was reading, I was like, this feels pretty accurate to the movie. And I wanted to confirm that suspicion. So last night I read about a third of the book, which only took about an hour and some change. It's a pretty quick read. And it is bang on. Like so much of the dialogue, the structure, like it is incredibly faithful to the book. So yeah, like I think that's probably one of the strongest things about this movie is Johnny Depp's character and just all the lines he's saying.
I want to see this as a one-man stage production.
Oh, that'd be tough. Yeah, so the movie opens in the desert. So the movie opens with footage of anti-Vietnam protests, and then we get a quote: "He who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man," which I interpreted as like getting fucked up on drugs kind of makes life feel okay.
Yeah, and I think when you kind of put it against the backdrop of all the strife that was occurring at that time, I think in a lot of ways, Hunter S. Thompson and Raoul Duke are is maybe just looking for a way to cope in a lot of ways. Maybe this is somebody who just can't really process sort of what is going on in the world. What I really like about that title card sequence is like, if you were to sit anybody down and be like, hey, we're going to watch a movie, and they would watch that title card sequence and be like, this is a drug movie that's set in the 60s, isn't it? And they would like kind of understand it right away. So.
Yeah, there's a moment when they're driving in their car and you just hear some like radio chatter, and it talks about the number of like Vietnam soldiers who had died because of heroin. And that kind of like thematically ties in, I guess. Like these are two men coping. Well, I don't know Dr. Gonzo's backstory, but certainly Hunter S. Thompson was an active participant in the 60s counterculture movement. And, he says like, we thought we were winning just by sheer force of like doing it, and it turns out that's not how politics works. And now they're kind of coping with the aftermath and where society is headed.
I love how this movie opens, and I love as soon as we see who I didn't, kind of pre-Spider-Man Tobey Maguire running up to the car, like, I've never been in a convertible before. He's like, really? And,
Get in.
And there's just like all of a sudden the reality of like, oh fuck, man, I want to take it all back. I want to run the other way, and he's wearing the Ralph Steadman, Mickey Mouse shirt that's portrayed in the novel. Is that opening with that hitchhiker is so gold. It's like subtle, that there it is there. Jason's holding up the illustration of the hitchhiker, and it's it looks like Tobey Maguire, for God's sake. So
yeah, they did some excellent casting there.
No.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire looks exactly the same today. It's kind of funny because he's like, 20 years old or something like that in this movie. I guess the skull helps.
Yeah, totally. I just love that Dr. Gonzo, when he's looking back, trying to pass him the joint, say, don't worry, just admiring the shape of your skull,
So I completely forgot that Benicio del Toro was even in this movie, which is wild because he's heavily featured in this movie.
He went all method. He put on a fair bit of weight to play this part.
40 pounds, apparently, Benicio put on for this movie. I thought it was a fat suit, and then I read later on that like, no, that's 100% Benicio.
You can do it. If COVID has taught us anything, it is that you can quite easily put on 40 pounds very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to go one direction. It's a question of like what happens next. I always feel bad for like, what if you do that and the movie is just garbage? You know what I mean? Like, I think this movie
you're still
is
getting
like,
paid.
Well, I guess, but you're also maybe doing irreparable damage to your body. And it's worth it if
you're still getting paid.
If it's a Raging Bull or like maybe Fear and Loathing, it's got that cult classic sense. I would say it's worth it in that regard. But man, you put that on for a real stinker.
Like Jared Leto put on like, I don't know what, 80 pounds or something wild for that John Lennon.
I haven't even heard of it. So clearly,
who shot John Lennon?
That's right.
Who played that guy?
The government.
John Wilkes Booth.
Isn't that?
That was the Lincoln guy, right?
Some asshole
I think
shot John Lennon.
Some guy shot John Lennon, and Jared Leto played him and put on a lot of weight. And he had gout afterwards when he was losing it.
Jeez.
Oh, Jesus.
But also he's a millionaire. So honestly, no, I don't feel bad for him. Good for you. Make that money.
We get some backstory in the hotel where they get the mission, the assignment. So this movie is basically like the structure of it is two different assignments that Raoul Duke is given to cover for a newspaper or something. And that hotel, everything is like Pepto-Bismol pink. There's a lot of gross 70s pink in this movie.
I just love that. Like 30 minutes, it was going to be close. And like Tom Jones playing in the background, and they're rolling into like 60s Las Vegas. That is so cool. And I love all those, Scorsese Casino and all of those other, Bugsy with Warren Beatty, where it's all, like a period piece and it's Vegas and it's run at a time where the gangsters are running it. And it looks really, Pepto-Bismol pink and so cool. So cool.
I love the pep talk Dr. Gonzo gives him in the car, and he's like, so you're going to have to check into a hotel on a lot of drugs under a fake name and commit a felony and blah, blah, blah. I think what this movie does capture is like, so I'm not a big drug head or anything, but I can sort of understand the approach to drugs, which is like you get as messed up as possible and you just try and accomplish tasks. And that's somehow like fun. It's a fun challenge. It's a weird way to live through life, but that's what this movie is a celebration of like how wasted can you get and then just try and like achieve your basic objectives for the day.
I was going to say, we've all been there, right? We've all been, that person maybe like drunk at a party trying to like talk to somebody and you're trying to maintain, but what's coming out is just like fucking awful. And I just love that where he's trying to check in. My name, Raoul Duke, and he's just can't even put a word together. And he's like, I do have my attorney with me. Like, the woman's just staring at him like, you fucking beatnik, fucking hippie motherfucker, right?
As you pointed out, Mona from Who's the Boss.
That's right. The lady is Mona from Who's the Boss. Your room isn't ready yet. Yeah. But someone is looking for you. Head turns into an eel.
I also don't remember this. Like people turning into puppets or CGI creatures.
See, that's what I remember most from the trailers before I saw the movie. I think they advertised that pretty heavily as like, whoa, look at these dinosaurs.
Riding off the popularity.
I got excited. I'm jumping out of it, but I got really excited when they all turned into weird reptile dinosaurs. And I was like, this is the movie I want. And then immediately there's like all this blood and they're all having like a weird violent orgy. And I was like, oh, this is actually, I hate this. I need this to stop immediately.
Oh, I love it. I love that scene.
It's so good.
Like, yeah, that scene is like, he's like reading people's minds or like imagining he can hear what they think. And then they're all like, basically he's disgust at like the people of Las Vegas. Like he's sort of just like, I guess, in comparison to the 60s, free love, all that kind of stuff. Like this is like dirty, grimy Vegas money. The American dream is like, can you just win a bunch of money at the table somehow? And he's just like looking at these people like they're monsters, and then they literally turn into monsters, and he's having a meltdown.
Yeah, it was so perfect. Would someone get me some fucking tennis shoes? Let's like wade through the fucking lizard blood orgy that's happening. And like, yeah, I think Jason, you hit the nail on the head there. Just like the disgust of all these people, like, some fucking lady is licking the fingers of, golden rings of some dude. And just, there's a fucking reptile zoo, It's a great fucking scene.
It does its job.
Elena's not convinced.
So then they get their hotel room and they meet the photographer dude whose name I'm totally forgetting. I like Lacerda.
Yeah. I like how
Portuguese man.
Portuguese photographer named Lacerda. I really like how, kind of starting at the bar, like you see Gonzo, they kind of like to fuck with each other. And he's kind of messing with Raoul Duke, and they go up, to the room, and he's like, they were getting ready to call the cops. Yes, they were. And then, and there's, and like, who is it? He knows that he pulls the gun out of the paper bag. And of course he knows, like, it's probably this Lacerda guy looking for him, but it's almost like he's got to, like, he knows Raoul Duke's still really fucked up. So he's got to, like, kind of continue to, like, play with it. And it's like, he comes in, he's sitting in the corner with his glass, like, I know who you are, kind of thing. Right. Like, it's kind of almost like, for show to, like, kind of keep Raoul Duke, entertained while he's all screwed up on acid.
That's interesting. I didn't interpret that I thought he was, like, totally serious, that, like, no, you were losing your mind out there and they were going to call the cops. Because they are, like, freak. There's this, paranoia about the cops because they've got all these drugs. It's super not legal, as they make clear a few times. Like later on when they're in that, like, rotating restaurant thing, he's just like, you're going to get us, we're going to get busted because of you.
They kind of do that to each other, though, I find a lot of the time. And I think that, him pulling out the gun, going up to the door, like, at this point too, it's really only Raoul Duke that is, tripping balls. But I kind of, like, perceive that throughout the movie, is that they kind of like to screw with each other.
They also kind of take care of each other. Like, whoever is least fucked up kind of has to babysit the other one. Like, I love that moment you were talking about in that rotating bar when Gonzo's, like, totally gone. And
I got the fear.
Yeah. I like, that's one of my favorite things about this, or what I enjoyed most about watching it, is their dynamic. Like, they do seem like they are friends that have been, as I mentioned in my notes, they're basically Jason and myself, two just wild cats trying to keep it together.
Yeah, typical Saturday night, rolling around the Denny's floor.
And I like that for me anyway, I really enjoyed where Lacerda is giving him the, kind of the rundown of the bikes, and Kawasaki, Pasang, Swedish Fireball, and he sees, like, the TV is kind of, like, projecting onto Lacerda, and then, like, Lacerda looks like he's one of the soldiers. Well, it seemed like, from the experiences I've had on acid, seems very realistic, very familiar.
I like his enthusiasm. Like, he just seems like a plucky, like, he's very serious about the job. Even later on when they're in the Jeep and he's like, I'm just trying all these different combinations of lenses to see what works.
Contrast Thompson, whatever.
So I have two questions. The first, well, not really a question, just something that I was confused about for a second. I was like, oh, is this a flashback? Like, has this man been to war now? He has PTSD and he's having a flashback. And then I was like, wait, no, that's not what's happening here. But the other question I did have was, like, is this what it's like to be? I've never done any illegal drugs. I've only even smoked weed 3 times in my entire life. And I used to drink like, a kid would drink when they're in their 20s. But, like, I really don't have experiences. So I was like, is this an aesthetic thing? Or is this actually similar to an experience of, like, when you're really fucked up? I want to know. Because I can't see the appeal if this is what it's actually like, why you would go back to that.
Yeah, you would have the fear, like, 2 minutes in.
Oh, you're done for, Alana. You're done for. For me, anyway, I found when the movie kind of does that thing where it's like some of it is I felt is very realistic. And then some of it is like, I've never, seen, a crowd of lizards. I haven't seen a lizard blood orgy yet. So that's maybe more of just like a visualization of what kind of how Hunter S. Thompson feels about these people, and like the big like eel head, but like where she's breathing and you can like see like her neck doing weird stuff, and like the running of the carpet looking all messed up, and like kind of things being projected onto other people. And, Yeah. So for me, I would say that those are like the most kind of realistic parts of that for me anyway.
He is like, yeah, like I think with the Vietnam, or when he's like, you know, a soldier dude, as he's like naming off the bikes and stuff like that, or later on when they're in the Jeep, Ride of the Valkyrie starts playing, you know, and he's like hearing gunfire and stuff like that. Like, I think part of that is just like paranoia kind of manifest, you know, like he is a guy who is like obsessed with culture and the news and what is happening. He constantly has, like, there's always a TV on in the background that's showing like footage of Vietnam and stuff like that. So it's like clearly a big part of his psyche.
Right.
You know, and a big part of his job to stay connected, or as far as we know, a big part of his job to stay connected. Hunter S. Thompson wrote for lots of publications like Rolling Stone, and I believe I did lots of articles about it.
Yeah.
So they get fucked up on ether and go see Debbie Reynolds. I think the ether scene was one of the funniest. I love it so much. Like, you mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. I feel like Wolf of Wall Street maybe took some inspiration from them, like walking into the concert, and they basically just get like rolled in and become total Karens demanding to be let inside.
We're friends of Debbie.
Yeah, I used to romp with her.
Look, this movie took some inspiration from a couple of movies we've done recently, such as The Sound of Music. This movie opens with My Favorite Things. Also, last week we did Singin' in the Rain, starring Debbie Reynolds. I mean...
So, yeah, no, I love that. They go and they try to get into the Debbie Reynolds show. They're reluctantly let in. Only to be kicked out 3 seconds later in like a fit of hysteria. And then they go to the circus and they get into the devil ether, which the most deplorable person in the world has got to be Dr. Gonzo. This guy is such a piece of shit. I just have to say right off the bat. They get into, and they're trying to walk through the circus, and the guys want to get them in the casino because they're just like fresh meat, right? Just get them in. So they're trying to like walk into the casino and they're falling over. And that's the part of the movie for me, kind of right up until sort of Dr. Gonzo kind of gets the fear and decides he's got to, get out of Las Vegas. I find the circus scene for me kind of is a bit of a slog. It kind of drags on a little bit. I'm like, we're still fucking here. Like, can we just like get on to the next scene already?
That's interesting. I really enjoyed this scene, though I kind of felt that way like from pretty early on, pretty much like shortly after they arrived in Vegas to like the end of the movie. It was kind of like, okay, let's move it along here.
So for about 2 hours, you were ready for it to be over.
Yeah, approximately. Maybe 140.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this part has some memorable moments in it, and I like it. The acrobatic show with the birth of the baby is great. Penn Jillette is in the movie for a minute.
It's the cameo at the circus. Yeah.
Yeah. So in reading the book last night, that detail is in there that you can, the thing is like you pay $2 and then they put your face on this like giant, there's some sign outside of a person and you get to like talk about Las Vegas. And it's funny in the book because he's kind of like really freaked out by that. He's like, $2, anybody can be like the size of a god just looming over the city, and it bothers him. And then he starts freaking out in the bar, and he's like, we came here to find the American dream, and now we're right here in the vortex, and you want to give up.
Yeah. He's got the fear. I like the, there's a woman fucking a polar bear. Don't tell me that right now. Yeah. How much they pay to fuck that bear? What did he say to me? You better watch out for your friend.
Then they go back to the room, and we get the really intense elevator scene as he recalls the woman from earlier.
Before that, we get Gonzo freaking out with his knife and just hacking away at anything he can find at the table, which I was like, okay, this is getting extra.
That's
Gonzo,
when he starts to feel very menacing. Like that's
yeah.
He says, like, don't turn your back on a drug. Like, if, you ever been around someone who's just, like, a little too fucked up on something and you're like, you might turn violent at any moment. It's it's unpleasant to be around.
Yeah, he's convinced that Lacerda has her.
Did you make a deal with them?
Yeah. Where he's what limes? Yeah, and now they have her, and then they cuts to that awesome scene in the elevator with Cameron Diaz. And
She's 5.5 years old in this. She's so young in this movie. I was shocked when I saw her.
One of my favorite Cameron Diaz performances of all time. You know, we're with the Vincent Black Shadow factory team. It's bullshit.
Yeah, Gonzo looks real fucking scary in the scene when he like whips out that knife and he's doing that like, yeah, whatever that move is, elbow thing.
The elbow with the knife, and the door opens and there's a little old couple standing there, standing with a knife up to the guy's neck, and doors close again. Oh, and now they have her. Love that scene.
She fell in love with me, man. She made eye contact.
Eye contact, man.
Yeah, so things kind of escalate, and Dr. Gonzo is having a bath, having a fun time, listening to some tunes.
Oh, God. Did you eat all this acid? You better pray to God there's some Thorazine in that bag. Otherwise, you're in bad fucking trouble.
That scene was wild. That scene went on for 10 years. That was a lot. I was astounded at the energy that these two had to maintain. Like, can you imagine what just for the duration of this film shoot, these two have to be at level like 25 out of 10 the whole time. And like Benicio del Toro is not a small man in this movie, thrashing around in that bathtub. That's pretty impressive. But it was like, this was a lot. This scene, I was like, I don't know that I can continue. I have to, because I've said that I've committed to watching this movie. But I think that if I wasn't committed to watching the movie, I may have checked out for a bit and put it aside for a moment to come back to later. But Johnny Depp's very funny in this scene.
Yeah, this is definitely maybe the point where things are really getting like kind of intensely miserable and grindy. I don't know, it starts to seem a little less fun, everything that's going on. Although earlier on when he's describing Ether, he's like, the horrible thing about it is you can like see yourself acting in this horrible way. And I was just like, then why are you doing that? But I know the answer, because it's fun.
Yeah, because drugs.
Yeah.
I like that, you know, up until this point, it's basically just been Raoul Duke that you've been seeing, you know, like under the influence, and he's fun and he's goofy, and maybe he doesn't speak very well when he's high. And then you juxtapose that, you put that beside Dr. Gonzo, who is like has a knife, and he wants to be electrocuted in the bathtub, and he's telling them like, I just have to get some sleep. Like, do whatever you need to do. I need to go to bed. Like, you know, he's having to take care of Dr. Gonzo, but the job of taking care of Dr. Gonzo is far greater than the job Dr. Gonzo has to do when he's taking care of Raoul Duke.
Yeah, Dr. Gonzo doesn't really even have any formal responsibilities throughout this entire adventure. Like, he's just like, oh, you got a mission? Oh, you're gonna need legal advice. I gotta come with you, and we gotta get a car, and we gotta get some drugs, and
naturally, my weekend is shot.
Yeah. I like how when he's trying to sleep, he just crawls under the cardboard box for about 10 seconds until he has to go electrocute him and pelt him in the head with a grapefruit.
I love that
grapefruits
song.
in this. What's the significance of the grapefruits? Is this something that's in the book?
Well, it's because they didn't have any limes, so they sent in grapefruits.
That's right.
It's pretty straightforward.
Naturally. Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm such an idiot.
So we get our flashback to the 60s, and he's, you know, telling us that, you know, he was in San Francisco in the mid 60s, and kind of what a wonderful cultural moment it was at the time. And I like this bit, like the sort of like the slow motion as he's walking around the club. You get a brief cameo of actual Hunter S. Thompson, which I will say goes on a little bit too long. I think they hold the camera on him for like a couple seconds longer than they need to for it to be like a cameo. Anyway, that's me being pedantic. And then the guy who's like, I got the fixins for LSD.
Lyle Lovett?
Lyle Lovett.
I was like, oh shit, it's Lyle Lovett. Well, Mark Harmon popped in for like 0.5 seconds earlier. I got warm and then he was gone.
Yeah, he was just another reporter at the Mint 400, Mark Harmon.
Oh, he was the guy he was talking to at the bar, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know who that was.
I really like the scene in the Matrix Club, not the Keanu Reeves movie, but yeah. And then of course he goes into the bathroom to do some LSD and spills some on his red woolen shirt, and we're met by Flea of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who was the trouble. Ooh, on my sleeve is LSD, and like the guy walks into the bathroom and the guy's trying to lick it off of his sweater.
Yeah, and then the guy walks in and he's like, with any luck, his life will be ruined, because you'll imagine behind every closed door there's guys in red sweaters doing things he'll never understand.
Getting tremendous kicks from things he'll never understand. And that really like soulful one.
Yeah, and his speech about the 60s is kind of like, I think this is probably like, you know, explicitly sort of saying like what is going on there. Whatever we were doing was right. We were winning. We had a sense of inevitable victory. We were riding a high and beautiful wave, but if you looked out past Los Angeles, you could see that high point and where the wave broke, and that is in the past. And now we are in the present, where like in the next scene, as he's escaping, the elevator opens and there's a cop or a sheriff handcuffed to like a little old lady.
The decision to flee came quickly. I love how they're describing like the monstrous, the condition of the room, and then like the monstrous room service bill that had been running, X amount of dollars for, 48 consecutive hours. And, because I had no money to pay it.
So he bounces out of there. I like the bit where he's like trying to drive away and the guy runs up to his car, and then every time he like accelerates, he has to stop, and the guy's got more questions or concerns. He's like getting just fucking frustrated.
So irritated. That's really, I think, the only time in the movie that that Hunter S. Thompson is named by name. He says, "No, it's not a telegram to Thompson. It's a telegram from Thompson. You see, we all speak in code, And I think that's the only time in the movie that Hunter S. Thompson is mentioned by name."
So he hits the highway, and this is one of the weirdest scenes in the movie. Is he's bombing down the highway, and a highway patrolman comes up behind him and pulls him over, and he's just like, fuck it, we're gonna go on a chase. And he's describing like, well, you're gonna make a 180, and it's okay, you're expecting it, but he won't, and you have to make him chase you so that they respect you. If you pull over immediately, they don't.
I was thinking, watching this, how many like guys in their late teens, early 20s pulled this shit on cops after this movie was released. There had to be an increase in the amount of like,
taserings.
Yeah. There's with some idiot going, well, I'm going to do the thing. Put your blinker on, man.
Dude, have you ever seen Fear and Loathing? Let's fucking do it. Yeah. Few people understand the psychology of a highway traffic cop.
Right.
I love that scene where with Gary Busey, and apparently he ad-libbed the line. And I don't know if because I haven't read I read a bit of the book years and years ago, but not all of it. Apparently Gary Busey ad-libbed the line, Can I have a little kiss? It's incredibly lonely out here. I don't think it's in the book.
Yeah, I don't recall my reading the other day did not get to that point. But yeah, Gary Busey, love Gary Busey. He's great in this. Bizarre
So charming.
Scene. He's just like demanding, he's like, you're gonna go pull over to a rest stop and take a nap. He's really letting him off easy.
Yeah. A little too easy, maybe.
The rest stop where we see Tobey Maguire again, shot like the action star of a post-apocalyptic movie. This is the weirdest shot. And then like the way I don't know technical terms, but like the camera swooped in on that telephone booth and then went out again. And I was like, holy moly, like with how for that one shot, all of that effort for every shot in this movie, all of that effort.
It kind of mirrors what we see later when they run into Lucy. I know we're not there yet, but it kind of like, it's like somebody else that I don't want to see this person. And there's like, this big shot of them just like, I see you and you see me. And like, and it's that thing that's like that really awkward moment to kind of keep up the intensely awkward, like flow of the whole movie. Yeah.
Like they when they dump the hitchhiker, like they're like terrified that he's like going to go to the cops and like rat him out for being fucked up on drugs. So yeah, I think that's why he's showing that way. Cause he's like, oh God, it's that guy. I can't escape him. He's like a villain.
He knows. Yeah.
So he has to go back to Vegas to cover, it's like a DA convention. So we get a Chris Maloney cameo.
Chris Bologna.
Crisp Bologna.
That's how he pronounces it. Yeah. Chris Bologna.
I just love this scene so much. I love so much about this scene where he comes in and he sees all the cops and he's got the briefcase, and my arrival was ill-timed. And they show like all the drugs in the case, and he goes up and there's a one cop talking to the desk clerk who's, I'm a police chief from Michigan. And he's like explaining how like, no, your hotel, sir, isn't here. It's actually, you've been booked like elsewhere. It's like, well, I've already paid for the suite. And then, Raoul Duke is like, but I could hear what he was really saying. Listen, you fussy little shithead. I love that scene is so hilarious, and how, charming Raoul Duke gets to swoop in and like, hey, can I just like get out of my, can I just, and he's like, I just love everything about that scene. I love the Cadillac he gets, the Land Shark that he trades in the Chevrolet convertible for is so cool. And I love how he walks in with the briefcase and he's got like a huge gob of cocaine under his nostril because he was snorting it in the car before he opened the door. I love everything about this scene. It's so great. And Christopher Bologna, he steals
Bologna.
He steals this.
He's going to hear this and he's going to be offended. Nobody knows how to say his name.
Not going to come on the pod now.
No, you won't come on the pod. I love this scene.
Fuck this up for us, Matt.
Yeah, he's like living a little customer service dream where he's just like, what does he say? Like, fuck you, officer, I'm in charge. Like he knows who has the power in that moment. And when Raoul Duke comes up, like, I feel like they're both like, he knows that he's not part of this crew. So he's just like, yeah, buddy, here's your shit. Come on.
That's
good.
Right. Don't hesitate to call me Sven.
Yeah. So he gets into his hotel room. It's another Pepto-Bismol pink room, and inside is Christina Ricci as Lucy, a probably underage girl that definitely should not be there.
This was an uncomfortable scene. I did not like how these fellas were talking about her in the hallway.
I actually thought that part was really funny, and I like it. Like Gonzo, I guess he saw her on the airplane, and he started feeding her drugs. Like he's not a good guy. He's super fucked up. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he slept with her. That is not clear. Do you think he did?
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely 100% had sex with her, and so he is. Yeah, Dr. Gonzo is a horrible person, and I find that Raoul Duke is trying to tell his friend that, like, man, you are really on a bad path with this the girl. What's the plan? well, what do you mean? The girl in the bedroom? Like, what the fuck? And I think he's speaking the way that he speaks, very sexually charged to Dr. Gonzo, because he's trying to let him know and trying to kind of shock him into realizing that, like, you're going to go to jail and you're going to, really not have a very good time there. And I like how he's saying all that shit. The people coming down the hallway, like, gasp with what they're hearing. And which, kind of, gets Dr. Gonzo, thinking, a little bit clearer, and they have to definitely get rid of Lucy.
Yeah, like he's basically I liked it because he is just Hunter S. Thompson, or Raoul is just putting things in the most like disgusting terms of like, well, we should prostitute her out to the DA convention and we can make all this money. It's straight economics, man. I think he's just sort of like just expressing the grossest, most disgusting idea to kind of like make it clearer and unnerve him. And he goes,
it's ugly.
Then we go down to the DA convention and we get this sort of surreal moment where the drug czar guy, the expert, the doctor or whatever, is explaining the four levels of marijuana culture. You can be cool. You start as square, then you become hip, then you become groovy, and then you become cool.
You're one of the cool guys.
If you guys could rate yourself on a scale of square, hip, groovy, cool, where would you put yourselves?
I'm probably... Well, my knuckles are often white with tension, and definitely my pants are crusted with something. So, yeah, I'm high up there. I got to be groovy.
I think I'm probably hip. I think I was probably one of the cool guys once upon a time, maybe. But yeah, my knuckles are white also from inner tension, and my pants can often be semen encrusted. So
I'm constantly jacking off for not finding a rape victim.
Oh.
I like that they actually show a shot of his pants. He's like looking at them.
Like trying to look, what the hell is that? The jizz stained pants.
Then they go back up to the hotel, and Lucy, they didn't manage to dodge Lucy when they dropped her off at that other place, and so they're like, oh fuck. So like Dr. Gonzo fakes his death over the phone while Raoul is taking adrenochrome, which apparently you get from an actual human adrenaline gland, and he's having an intense freak out. And this was like probably the most like intense drug paranoia scene, I think, of all of them. Not paranoia, but just like unpleasantness.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really a super tense scene where, Dr. Gonzo is transforming into a beast with breasts on his back. And certainly, I just want to say too, really quick, right? All the vomiting that Dr. Gonzo does in this movie is really gross. Like, oh God, I think it was right after they come back maybe from the drug convention where he's like talking about how he has an appetite for red salmon. And then he's like, cuts away and he's just like,
that is the most chunks. Real looking barf.
Oh, man.
And like, you could feel it. Like I was like watching it. One of my notes says, I'm having trouble staying focused. I want to know what the fuck, but also I'm exhausted and disgusted. How many more times do we need to watch Benicio barf? That was my exact note. I was really exhausted by the barf by the end on the car, inside the car door.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was so good.
Oh, God. How many of us have driven a drunk friend home and you know exactly what that smells and sounds like?
Oh, I've been the one with the head out the window. That's not fun. I mean, years ago at a sort of work function with friends. We went out drinking after, and it went out way late, and I had way too many. So, one of those people drove me home, and just like I had my head out the window the whole time, and they had to hose the thing down after. It was bad. Nothing got inside
Classic.
though. I'm a professional. So Raoul wakes up from his drug frenzy, and the room is just absolutely trashed. Like 2 feet of water. He's a furry now. He's got a tail attached to him, and he's got like his tape recorder contraption, and he just kind of relives the past, however long that went on. And we find out that the maid, they like kind of almost assault a maid, who is Vasquez from Aliens. I guess that's assault.
They totally assault her, and
but they give her a job. Kind of.
Except it's not real. And yeah, totally Vasquez and John Connor's adopted mother from Terminator 2.
That's right. She gets the stabby arm.
Yeah, that's right. It's not my mother, Todd. I know we're not talking about Terminator 2, but that's a really intense scene, and that whole I like how they kind of fill you in on what's happened through those flashbacks. I think is a really neat device for, they could have just made it sort of like, hey, he does this and then this stuff happens. But I kind of like how he sort of wakes up and Tammy is playing in the background. It's like really serene song, and it's just like fucking destroyed when he's like listening to back through all the recordings. And
he's like seeing things and then remembering them, like sees the broken mirror, and then Dr. Gonzo like punches it. I can't remember what he was freaking out about, but upsetting, nightmarish stuff. Let's get down to brass tacks. How much for the ape?
I love that. I really love that scene with Ellen Barkin, the Ellen Barkin cameo in the diner. I think is really, it's really upset. It's really troubling, but I really, I like everyone's I like the performance of that scene is really cool and tense and terrifying. And I kind of you see like, by the end of this movie, for me, I'm really convinced that like Hunter S. Thompson is like a good guy. Dr. Gonzo is totally a fucking lunatic monster. But Hunter, Raoul Duke is a good guy. And I like that scene where clearly, Raoul Duke has done a number on this poor, diner owner. And then, Raoul Duke goes to take the plate to eat outside, sees that she's really upset, and goes like, okay, we'll just get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that scene is kind of like, I don't know, a wake up call, reality in your face. Like this is like, it's gone from being, they're dicks to everybody throughout the entire movie. But it's just kind of funny because it's like a wacky Vegas drug adventure. But like this moment feels very real.
Yeah. There's a stark difference between throwing change at a little person and like, threatening, this woman in the diner. So
yeah, like he goes and like cuts the phone cord, and she had been scarred from probably a situation similar. So really tense, really like horrific. It just kind of solidifies the fact that like, man, Dr. Gonzo is such a fucking asshole. The real life Oscar Zeta Acosta disappeared mysteriously in Mexico in 1974, I believe it was. So, and his son believes that probably he just, was in the wrong place and mouthed off and was murdered.
Yeah.
I will say the one part about that scene that does make me laugh is just when he hands her that note that says Backdoor Beauty, but he says the question mark was emphasized.
It was the name of a horse I used to own, ma'am. No, it wasn't. Or when he like buys the pie and like stuffs the money down the front of her shirt, you're like, oh God.
Yeah, it's intense, but it's a good scene. It's a really good scene.
Yeah, really good scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's basically we're getting to the end. So he's got to drive him to the airport. So he's bombing down. I like he says, I never missed a plane yet, and I like driving your friend to the airport is like that's a whole like cultural thing, you know. So I sort of like that's a moment of like bro solidarity there. Of like I'm getting you on that fucking airplane.
Drives through the fence, and like the fence is on the front end of the Cadillac, which at this point is just like trashed, and he just like drives right onto the tarmac, and like, you know, his friend hops out, you know.
Hey, it was the 70s. You could do that. None of this tight airport security bullshit that we've got now.
9/11 ruined everything.
Yeah, he got on an airplane and then they took his like water bottle away.
There's somebody like making sure he has the gels in the little container.
Yeah. Too big, sir. Yeah, and he describes him as one of God's own prototypes, a high-powered mutant of some kind, never considered for mass production, too weird to live, too rare to die. I like that he's sort of just admiring this guy for what he is.
A high-powered mutant.
Yeah, just the appreciation of like, this guy's fucking nuts, but, you know.
He's his kind of nuts, I guess.
Yep. And then he bombs off down the highway. That's it.
Jumpin' Jack Flash. This movie's got a great soundtrack. I know we haven't touched on that, but I owned this CD back in the day, again, to further me and my friend Ryan, you know, feeling like we were Hunter S. Thompson and Dr. Gonzo. Listen to White Rabbit like 1,000 times while like smoking weed. And this movie's got a great soundtrack.
So I have a question for you, Matt. So I know you love this movie and it like has meaning for you in terms of like growing up and like what it meant for you and your friends. What would you say is like the thing about it that you really connected with? Was it like this sense of exploration and freedom as a young man? Because like I really just there's not much for me to connect with in this. So I'm genuinely curious because I know a lot of particularly men who really connect with this film. And I'm just sincerely like, no bullshit. I'm curious, like what is the appeal and what is the draw?
Sure. I think really for me, a large part of my appreciation for this movie probably comes, you know, from a fair, you know, dose of nostalgia. And I think if I was watching this movie for the first time now, maybe I wouldn't feel the same way about it. For me, what I really like about this movie is Johnny Depp's performance, probably first and foremost. I know that like in preparing for this role, he spent like 4 months with Hunter S. Thompson, you know, at his place in Colorado. And, you know, there's pictures where, you know, Hunter S. Thompson is like, you know, shaving the, you know, the baldness into his head. I think probably further than that, I think it, you know, I saw it at a time where I was living in New Brunswick. I didn't have many friends, but I did have you know, one of my best friends and somebody I'm still really quite close with now, my friend Ryan. And we were just, you know, into cool stuff, and we were into, you know, Tarantino, and we were into smoking weed, and we were into like going on road trips, and we were into, you know, hanging out all the time. And I think watching this movie like in that context with like my best friend, who we shared similar interests, I think, you know, just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of made it very cool for me. So I think, you know, a big part of this movie and my appreciation for it now probably comes from just the moment in my life in which I, you know, first viewed it. So other than the performances, I love the cameos. I'm a big Benicio del Toro fan. I'm a big, you know, Johnny Depp fan here and there. He really kind of disappears into this role for me. So I think kind of all of those things kind of make, you know, this perfect storm of appreciation. I think that, you know, and now kind of speaking, you know, having to look at this now, I'm almost certain that I probably wouldn't like it as much if I watched it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I was wondering when I was watching it. So like for me, it feels kind of the same as it did when I first watched it. Like I can appreciate what they've done and it looks great. I think it holds up in terms of like it doesn't feel dated to me. Like if this came out this coming weekend, I'd be like, okay, I'd buy it, right? Like in terms of that, this feels like a contemporary film, even though it's like 20 years old now or whatever. I don't know that I'll revisit this one. It's a lot. It's so much. I'm like exhausted. But again, I can appreciate what it was doing. But I just don't connect with things. And it's interesting. So like Johnny Depp, I think he's very, talented, but I feel like I could see him doing the work of like, I'm going to play this guy instead of just like playing the guy. Whereas like Benicio del Toro, I feel like I wasn't watching him act. I was watching him just be this wild man. But I think it might just be like how it's stylized too, and like the vibe of the character. But I kind of got pulled out a little bit. Like, I don't think it's a bad performance at all, but there were times when I was like, it just seemed so, so intentional to the point of like, I guess if I was like on stage, I'd be like, it almost feels like over rehearsed, like it doesn't feel natural. I mean, it's not really natural. It's a wild movie, but I don't know. Am I making sense? I'm just rambling now.
Yeah, no, you're totally making sense.
Are you accusing Johnny Depp of having theater kid energy?
No, no, he does not belong in the same camp as Tom Everett Scott. They're two different vibes.
Yeah, it was fun to watch this movie again. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. Like I like it. I think it's a good movie. I enjoy watching it. I'm sort of hard pressed to say like this is what this movie is really about, or like what someone should take away from it. And I could totally understand why someone would watch it and not really get much out of it. I think for me, what I like is I do like the portrayal of drug culture and what getting fucked up on drugs is like, and the way it can almost be like a sport. You're just trying to like push. You get messed up and you're trying to accomplish some benign task, and it's the most difficult thing in the world. And you think you're on an adventure. Like, definitely I've been drunk with friends before, and it's 2 a.m. You're like, we're gonna go to 7-Eleven, and you just think you're like fucking on some like spy espionage mission. And you're like building it up with each other. Like that stuff totally connects. And definitely when I was younger, I thought that was like really, really funny and interesting. I do like the theme of it being an exploration of like the failures of the 60s. It doesn't get into that all that much. And even reading the book, like there's a little bit more of it because he kind of has more opportunity to just like talk and stuff like that. I think in the movie, you sort of have to just like get some of that from the context, I guess, like the fact that there's always footage of Vietnam on all the TV screens and stuff like that, and or like Richard Nixon's head floating at the camera in a drug trip. Yeah, it's and it definitely has a great soundtrack, lots of great music to it. Looks good. Terry Gilliam's got a certain kind of like weird visual style, and it's very much at play here. The advertisements were a bit misleading in that they really did emphasize the dinosaur stuff. That is the one thing I remember before actually watching it. And it was not a continuation of the Dinosaurs franchise, unfortunately. So I'm going to give this movie 8.5 ether binges.
I think my feelings can be summed up by a line that was sort of in the middle of the movie. What was the meaning of this trip? Was I just roaming around in a drug frenzy of some kind, or had I really come out here to Las Vegas to work on a story? I will give it points for being self-aware, but I give it like 1,000 like shrugs. I don't know how I feel about it. I think I can see why some people would be really drawn to it. Not for me. I'm I've kind of got, I don't know. That's what I rate this one.
It's Moulin Rouge
to our
for the
esteemed
boys.
Guest. Maybe
This one belongs to us.
You wouldn't get it.
Yeah, you guys deserve something for once.
You can have Wonder Woman, and we'll have Fear and Loathing.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Yeah, I'm going to go listen to the Wonder Woman soundtrack and work out after this.
I love her theme. That is so great.
Right.
I give this movie 4 Tobey Maguire hitchhiking out of 5 possible Tobey Maguire's hitchhiking.
I'm surprised you didn't give it a full score just because I know you appreciate this movie so much.
It's nothing's perfect.
Don't let her talk you down from the 5 out of 5. If you feel
I'm like
it.
I don't know. Now I'm not sure if I should.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Ex Post Watcho. Big thank you to our friend Matt Gunn for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you came. I hope we can do it again sometime. Do you have anything you want to plug? Do you have you got a TV series or a Twitter account or an Instagram? A non-government organization? I'm really not here to plug anything. I'm just super, really happy to be here and super happy to talk about one of my favorite movies. And you guys just do great stuff talking about all of my favorite movies. It's just like, oh, it's another week and it's another one of my favorite movies. So I'm just really appreciative to be asked to participate. And I hope I added something beneficial to the discussion.
You certainly have. Jason
Thanks.
almost walked off the show last week. Wait for it. You'll hear about it. So yeah, I think you've saved the show. I think you've mended relationships here today, Matt.
Hey, I'm only a man, right?
All right, you can find us on social media at Ex Post Watcho. We're on Instagram and Facebook. If you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at expostwatcho@gmail.com. We'd love to know what you thought of any previous episodes, or if there's any movies you think we should talk about, that'd be great. Also, if you have a minute, rate us on your podcasting platform of choice. It helps people find the show. Next week, we'll be doing another Jake Gyllenhaal love fest, although he's younger, so it's a bit weird. We're going to watch Donnie Darko. Yeah.
Yeah, another one of my favorite movies.
Stay tuned, everybody. Have a good week.
Come on.